I was much older than I should have been before I really put it together that you feel your feelings. You're going to have emotions and they're going to make the whole world feel like it's a certain way.
Your emotions are real, they're just not true.
This amazing messenger, they're trying to do what's in your best interest, but they're not always right.
Breathwork is not a tool to numb myself from the human experience. For many of us, it is a beautiful tool to help me access the emotions of the human experience.
This is the first podcast I'm talking about it on. And I knew I was going to. Whenever you reached out, I was like, I can share this with you. If you're going through something like this, just to know that you're not alone and to have the support of loved ones and friends is just so helpful. If you're a person like me and you don't like sharing this sort of thing, you're not bothering your loved ones.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast. I am your host, Scott Stone, and I'm here today with a very special guest, an author, a father, an entrepreneur, the creator of The Language of Breath and the author of A Practical Guide to Breathwork, Jesse Coomer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. I want to say in person, but the technical...
I wish it were.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesse and I got to meet back in, I don't know, what was this, 2022, 2023 maybe?
Somewhere around there. It was, I'd say probably around, it was post-COVID, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we met up for a pretty awesome weekend in Delaware, Ohio.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar with Delaware, Ohio, it's close to Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, those are some good days.
Yeah, it was, and I had never done what I did, so little backdrop, I followed Jesse, from his content, and Jesse was one of the original level 3 Wim Hof trainers, so he's been in this breathwork game for quite a while. And I just messaged him. I was like, hey, I just want to help out. Can I just come help at your workshops? And he was like, of course, whatever,
yeah.
Come on in. And so I just wanted to see how another guy did it. And, that led to a relationship between the two of us. I had a coaching client that I met at that workshop that worked with me for the following 2 years as a product.
Nice.
Meeting there, which was beautiful. And it was really cool to just witness you in your element.
I really enjoy doing those, workshops. As you know, I am a recovering college professor. So, maybe it's just in my blood to want to be in front of people and teaching things. But when you really are excited to share stuff, and also when there's just so much enthusiasm in the room, being a college professor, you don't always get that much enthusiasm in the room, right? So having people that are there, they're excited to be there. There's a lot of excitement in the room. And then, hey, this guy, he messaged me, sounds like a cool guy. Let's meet. I think we went out for pizza that night, had a really deep conversation, and that's what I love about life, right? I mean, we didn't know each other from Adam, and it's like, well, all right, cool. We like this thing. And then, here we are, these years later because of that great connection that we made.
Yeah, you mentioned college professor, and I think if I remember the research correctly, it was English and rhetoric.
Right. Yeah. So there's all sorts of, in the English world, you can say research and rhetoric. Yeah, you can say composition, all these things. So yeah, research and rhetoric is a fancy way of saying I'm the guy who looks at other people's research really, and tries to synthesize it and make it make sense to the rest of the world really.
I mean, what a beautiful preface, though, for your creation, A Language of Breath. Could you tell us a little bit about how you found that, fluency in that language?
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think in the world of breath work, I feel as though we started first wave breath work, was rebirthing, vivation, liberation breathing. And when I say first wave, that was really in the West, here in the United States, Europe. That's our first real, oh, wow, this is what breathwork is, right? It's one thing you're doing, right? You're hyperventilating for long periods of time. You do it different ways, but you're hyperventilating for long periods of time. And it was for the purpose of basically a psychedelic experience, spiritual connection, right? And it was this one specific thing that you're doing. And you had a lot of claims, most of them being very spiritual claims. If you're familiar with Leonard Orr, his claim was you'll have physical immortality, if you do his. which is a hard, that's a hard sell. But anyway, but that was what breathwork was. And then there was the second wave of breathwork. And that's whenever I got into it. Whenever you had like Wim Hof and Patrick McEwen, you had Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, you had these other people who were doing different techniques. They're doing one specific thing. They're like, no, I think if you do it this way, you're going to get the best overall results. And whether it's over breathing like Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and Wim Hof, or under breathing, like Patrick McEwen with Buteyko, he was like, okay, there's a specific way that I think if you do this particular style of breathing, you're going to bring about. And in this case, that second wave, you don't see as much spiritual stuff. You do see some, but most of it was like health, wellness, vitality and better immune system and, all these other things. And that's when I got into it. And I was like, okay, let's see which one's the best. Because that was sort of the mentality, right? It's like, okay, out of all the breathing techniques, which one's the best? And I guess you do that, and then you're done, right? And so what I found was that it was like, well, wait a minute. So this is a really good one in this particular case, right? And then this is one like, this is when I would do at this particular time. And then this technique I would do at this particular time. And the funny thing is, I started to sort of put those things together. I'm like, well, why wouldn't we learn all these things? Because, one technique, you're really limiting yourself. And so that's when I wrote the first book that I wrote. And this is when I was a college professor. They have a thing that other professions don't have. We have this thing called sabbaticals. And a sabbatical is this beautiful thing. After you've worked, I forget how many years. I was like 8 years or so into my profession. And you really paid your dues, and you've got quite a bit of respect in the community. You're like, hey, listen, I want to take a sabbatical. And then most teachers look at sabbaticals as like sort of a vacation, and you're going to maybe write a few poems, or you're going to write a thing about like this one author that you really like, and then you're going to come back refreshed, but I was like, you know what? I love this thing. I love breathwork. I love it so much. And I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to put all this stuff together. And I'm going to try to show people how it all works together and how it's not just one thing. It's all working with the same things. And so that was in 2020. And it was so funny because I took the sabbatical, and you have to put in like a year in advance to take a sabbatical. And so 2020 was going to be my year, right? And I was like, this is going to be the best year ever. I had all these plans to fly around the world, and so that came to a quick halt. And next thing you know, what's so funny, back then I was doing I did a Poland excursion with Wim Hof, and I came back, and the first thing I did is I broke one of my fingers, and then I was like, I got to write this book, and I got a broken finger. And then the next thing I did was I broke the other one. I broke 2 fingers on my left hand. And then my son had to be home from daycare because of all the COVID and stuff. So it was the craziest sabbatical, not restful at all, but it was the best sabbatical ever because I put together that book. It came out in September of 2020, and it became one of the most recommended books on breathwork in the world. And I didn't think, I was just going to be happy to get it done, right? I was just going to be happy to finish it. I was like, I think I can put these things together. And it was a huge surprise. And what it led me to, and the funny thing is, if I didn't have to, as part of your sabbatical, you have to pay back all your income if you don't publish by a certain date. So I had to publish it by that September. And so that's why I did it. But if I had kept going on that book, I would have had the language of breath later, because I was already onto this interoception thing. And I wasn't 100% sure where it fit in, but I knew it fit in somewhere. And what happened was, later I found out I was working with the Vivation group, so a first gen breathwork. And I was trying to help them sort of come back, right? Because it was sort of a dead breathwork, and I was trying to help it come back. And I was doing a lot of study. And at that time, I found out about the work of Dr. Cynthia Price. And she has done insane research on just sustained interoceptive awareness. Just focus in on a place of your body and just focus there for a long, long, long period of time. And so I went and trained with her, and I was like, okay, I get it now. And so when it comes to the language of breath, it has to do with the fact that we have conscious and unconscious processes. And I didn't get this at first. I still looked at us like most of us do. We look at ourselves like a machine. We've got a computer up here. We've got like a robot down here, right? And that's what we are as humans. But in reality, it's a little bit more complex than that. We have conscious and unconscious processes that change our physical expression depending on what those conscious and unconscious processes believe our situation to be. And no machine changes as much as the human organism does, depending on our state and our perceived safety or non-safety. So I was like, okay, so we're really communicating in a really deep, powerful way every time we breathe. And if we can learn how to observe the physical sensations that come along with emotion and with unconscious processes, then we can start to even listen and start to have that conversation back and forth. And I was like, this is crazy. This is kind of interesting. And so I started applying it to my clients, and I started applying it, and I was like, ooh, we got something here. It's one of those crazy things where I didn't set out to say, I'm going to come up with my own style of breathwork, right? It literally just happened because, you know, Scott, sometimes I like to say that a teacher is someone who's curious and can't keep a secret, right? If you're a teacher, if you're curious and you can't keep a secret. And that's kind of what happened. I was just like, oh, what about this? And what about this? And I was so fortunate that I was able to have clients and have a profession that really supported that, so that when I started the school, I could retire from being a college professor and just do this full time. And I will say, I don't know how I would ever have the time to be a professor again at this point, because there's just so much in the world of breathwork that we can do, and so many people that need help. So I wake up every morning almost just surprised that it's actually real. You know, it's just like, wow, this is real.
I know that feeling. And it's thank you for the, just painting the picture of the journey, because it's when we talk about breath work, most people think of it like you said, like, oh, it's just hyperventilating. And it's like, right. Yeah, in some cases, super ventilative breath work is really helpful, whether it's trauma release or energization, whatnot. But like under breathing, like the Buteyko and the Patrick Miku and Oxygen Advantage stuff, is also super helpful.
Yeah.
If you're super dysregulated, and if you can't sleep right, and you got apnea and anxiety and all this other stuff, and to go explore all those things, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and all these different types of modalities, to see like what is the underlying theme that tugs through all of it, and going and exploring that world. It's something that I don't think is well discussed.
And I think the big realization was that breathing is like a language, in that, there's a perfect time to say, I love you in a conversation, right? There's a lot of not so perfect times to say that, right? There's a perfect time to say, be quiet. And there's a lot of not so perfect times. And what we're doing when we practice these techniques is we're sending those kinds of messages.
Yeah.
When we're doing superventilation, we are engaging parts of our physiology in a way that changes how our brain is working. And that's sending a completely different message than, okay, now I'm going to do 4-7-8 or box breathing. Not to say one is better than the other. It's just, it's just like a language. It's just like in conversation, there's a good time and a bad time to bring those up, right? So if you're freaking out and I say, well, something that's really good to calm you down is to breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out for 8 seconds. I'm not wrong. That's great for calming you down, but you've got to be pretty calm in order to inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 8 seconds. That's a 12-second breath. That's pretty slow.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so where are we in the conversation, and what is appropriate for this particular instance? And in most cases, if you can develop what I like to say, you develop a better team between your conscious and unconscious processes. And this happens by engaging with it on a regular basis. A lot of times you don't even have to do anything at all, right? There's times whenever you're with your partner or good friend and you don't have to have conversation. You can literally just be walking quietly next to each other, right? And you can do that with yourself too. You don't always have to be doing stuff, especially if you've developed that good relationship with yourself.
Yeah, no, a lot of what you're talking about reminds me of two things. One is the first is a distinction that one of my coaches, Peter Crone, talks about, which is most people don't need to get better at talking to themselves. They need to get better at listening.
Yes.
Right. If we actually heard the things that we speak over ourselves and truly felt the heaviness of that, we would shift, because it's soul crushing to hear the way that we, just demoralize and deprecate ourselves. And so the other thing was that it reminded me a lot of parts work. I've been in IFS parts therapy for, internal family systems parts work therapy for 4 years now. And a big part of that is learning how to work with our inner world. And understanding when it is a good time to say be quiet versus I love you, and most of all asking the question. This is one of the practices that I really appreciate is when we ask each other a question of like, okay, where do you think that comes from? We think of a response versus allowing ourselves to listen for a response from our internal world, right? And so when we're breathing in a certain way, trying to think of like, okay, what's the right way to do this, and what's supposed to come up, and what's this trauma from, and how do I process it, versus I'm gonna commit to breathing a certain way, and I'm going to allow whatever comes up to come through. And that is a totally different experience than most of us are experiencing in breathwork.
We get tied to the result. We think that the end result has to be X, Y, Z, and so we're just like, no, I got to force it.
Right.
As opposed to letting it happen.
Right. I'm curious what, like in that, it just pings me a reminder of like, men's work and how we as men have been, the masculine, at least we've been groomed to believe, whether it's the truth or not, is that, men are forceful and we drive solutions and we fix problems and whatnot. How has that practice of surrendering the outcome and allowing for things to come through shifted the way in which you show up as a man in the world?
I love that question. I don't, that's a topic that I don't really talk about too much is being a man, which I guess I should. I think one of the biggest things that we often don't do is listen to, going back to that listening, is really listening to what it is that's coming up and knowing that it's not necessarily an objective picture of reality. Right. So I do feel as though one of the things, I've been married now for 14 years and of course we were like, how long have we been married again? So fortunately, my wife and I are just as bad at remembering how long we've been married. We're like, guys, is it 13? Is it 14? But the thing is, when you're in a good male-female relationship, you start to notice, okay, I tend to be the one who's doing this and she tends to be the one that's doing that. But communication between the two of us is so important because the way we see the world might be different, just based off of our unique experiences. And so something that I've noticed is that it takes a little bit of time for me to actually parse out what it is that I'm feeling. And, even with all the work and all these things that I've done, I know that it will benefit me and my relationship, right? So it benefits me in the way that I can express exactly what it is I'm feeling in a better, more clearer way, as opposed to sort of half-baked, I think, blah, blah, blah. Taking the emotion, taking those sensations, those feelings that come up, and allowing myself to sit with them for a moment has been huge. Not only in my relationship with my wife, but also in my relationship with the rest of the world, because it's important to understand why we want to do something. The why, leads to the how. And so oftentimes I will feel something and I know that it's all there. The intuition, whatever it is, it's really there. The thing that's going to drive me. But I have found that pause and that listening has been so, it's something that I didn't do when I was younger and I wish I would have, and just taking that pause and knowing that I need to let the dough rise or whatever it is that's happening. I need to let that process take place a little bit longer has been really helpful. Another thing that I have, a tool that I recommend is something called affect labeling. And it's simply just saying out loud how you feel, not to anyone else. I do this with some of my clients. I call it an affect label walk. So you walk just by yourself and you just try to parse out exactly what you feel in words. You're not just doing it in your head, you're doing it out loud. And it's just so helpful to put those things into words and to put it into a space where you can sort of work with it.
Yeah, I like to say that in order to move from our head into our body, we have to move through our voice, like through our throat, right? And so the opportunity to speak these things out into the world and give them voice and move them from whatever ethereal, energetic composition it is into some frequency-based mattering, it allows the body, because a lot of people are like, well, if I say it out loud, it's real. And it's like, actually, if you say it out loud, you're letting go of it, because most times, like, if I say this out loud, then, it's like, actually, it's if I don't say it out loud, I'm holding on to it.
Yeah.
And so the allowance of someone, myself or you or otherwise, to say like, oh, I'm feeling this, and just labeling it, this is the experience that I'm having, this is the sensation in my body. And back to the parts work stuff and the interoceptive aspect of this is like, these parts of us, in a lot of cases, are much younger and they don't know how to communicate with us. So they use sensations in our body because we can't avoid them. So when we're like, oh, I feel this tension in my shoulder, the part's like, oh my God, he's paying attention to me. Finally, I've just been yanking on his trap for a month and finally he's acknowledging me. So then it's like, okay, now that part can lessen its intensity because it's getting attention. And then, from there, working in this, back to this like listening way of like, hey, what do you need? Like, what's going on in here? And allowing that conversation to kind of arise and unfold.
I was much older than I should have been before I really put it together that you feel your feelings. Same. Right? It's like, okay, we have this word that we've been using, like my 10-year-old son understand. Okay, yeah, your feelings. Yeah, it hurt my feelings or whatever. But then it wasn't until I might have been 40. I don't know, late 30s. And I did a very simple experiment with something that I do now with every client I meet. I closed my eyes and I thought about something that made me angry. And I was like, wait a minute, there are sensations coming up. Not only am I changing the way I'm breathing, not only am I feeling these change at my face, got, change, but I feel something there. There's actually a physical sensation. And then, you do the same thing. You can say, okay, now think of something that makes you feel gratitude. And you change, literally you feel different. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that we as men, when it comes to emotions, and a lot of times we talk about, having control over our emotions. And the reality is you can't, right? The reality is emotions come from a part of you that you cannot consciously control. So you will have the emotion. I'll have clients sometimes, because I'll even do the experiment. I'll say, think of something that makes you feel jealous. And no one wants to admit that they ever feel jealous, right? It's either I, of course, have transcended that, or I feel guilty because I was taught as a kid, you shouldn't feel jealous, right? And it's like, okay, you're going to feel it. Guess what? And we as men, we tend to be the ones that do all the most violent crimes. The prisons are full of us, and it's something where we have these very strong emotions, right? Very strong. A lot of times people always, women have they're the emotional ones. We're not, but. I mean, just the reality is obvious, right? If that were true, right, there would be, just think about all of the crime we do. You don't do like physical acts of violence because of logic, right? It's emotion. And so when it comes to something I teach my son and things that we have to remind ourselves as men, you're going to have emotions and they're going to be strong and they're going to make the whole world feel like it's a certain way. And that's because that's what they're there to do. Emotions are there to make you feel as though you need to do something. Mm-hmm. They're this amazing messenger, and they're trying the strange thing. They're trying to do what's in your best interest, but they're not always right. They're not always correct, I should say, right? And, exhibit A is, every person, who's done road rage, right? And like you could, the list goes on and on. And so learning how to work with your emotions and say, okay, so I feel a certain way, and learning how to say, okay, let's sit with this and let's like observe. And then what happens is you get good at it. You get better at it, at least. I'm not saying I'm like amazing at it. And, but working with your emotions is so important. And the interesting thing here, you don't like, you hear about this in the breathwork world, but you don't also. I remember going through some terrible times in my life. I remember, and this was during my Wim Hof years. So my wife and I, we're foster parents, and we were foster parents to these two beautiful little girls, very young and like 10 months old, 2 years old. And we were foster parents to them for an entire year. The whole time they were like, yeah, you're going to be able to adopt these girls. Right. And so, they say, hey, anything can happen, but, and of course we fell in love with them. They went back to their bio mom, and, it was the saddest, heartbreaking. Right. And I remember at the time I was like, well, why am I so burdened by these emotions? I should be able to do breath work and, and I should be fine. Oh, happy, healthy, and strong all the time. And it really messed with me. And it really helped me to grow. I will say, anytime your heart breaks, I think it grows back larger if you let it. You can close it off too. But for me, it really helped me to grow my heart larger. But it also let me know that, hey, breath work, mindfulness, all these practices, they're not going to make life painless, and they're not necessarily like, they're not really supposed to, right? The whole point is to help it to be more tolerable, to help you to manage better. But I cried my eyes out every day, for weeks, and actually this time of year comes around, I think about it because this is the time of year when they went back. So, it's something where, as men, I think we need to just acknowledge, hey, you're going to have stronger emotions, really strong emotions, and they're going to make you want to do things, and they're going to make you want to give up too sometimes. But they're not an objective measure of reality. Just trust your emotions, right? It works on Star Wars, but it's not really the case. We should respect them and listen to them because it may be true that, hey, we need to do this thing. Your gut can be very strong, right? Or very wise. Your intuition can be very wise. But that same intuition that led, maybe me to my wife, who I guess 14 years deep, we're doing all right, is the same intuition that might have led, maybe it leads that one friend of yours. He just always is finding the girl that cheats on him too, And this is one of those reasons why it's important to listen and to consider, right? To take that time to consider, what am I going to do with this emotion, right? What am I going to do with these feelings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the quote that comes up is, your emotions are real, they're just not true.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
They are part of our reality. They have density to us, but they're not the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Another quote from Peter Crone is that your emotions are a poor indicator of reality.
Yeah.
And there's
and isn't that funny? Because it's so true. There's one of my favorite. I forget his. So sometimes I have a favorite comedian and I forget the comedian's name. So I'm sorry I cannot give a shout out. But he did a bit and it just blows me. I've been sending it, all around. And he says, the other day I was on a bridge and I looked over and I wanted to jump off that bridge and just die. There was a hole inside of me that just there could not be filled. There was something in me that wasn't there, and I wanted to end it all. Then I realized I hadn't had lunch yet. And that hole was my stomach, and I needed a sandwich.
right.
I don't know how many times the whole world has looked terrible when I'm tired, right? Or you can have the same situation, but then one day, your dog just died, right? My dog is on his last legs. We found out he has cancer. And so he's He's survived. He's 15 years old. He's this amazing survivor. But, you know, the day I found that out, everything was a little, you know, everything is going to be seen through that lens, right? And it's important to recognize that. There's no human experience that's without emotion. And it is just part of being a human. And emotions can be amazing things. And they can direct you to the truth. Like we all know that time when intuitively I just knew that this was the right choice, you know. But we do need to check, right? So trust but verify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also just want to go back and acknowledge what you said earlier about like you didn't know until you were 40-ish that feeling your feelings was, you know, a feeling is meant to be felt, not thought through. And for me, I totally can resonate. You know, I said I didn't become a man until I was 37, you know, or 35. When Chester died, I became a man because I held my best friend's hand while he died. You know, like I ushered him to the other side, and that is not a boy thing to do. That is a man thing to do. And it broke me on such a deep level that no amount of ice baths, no amount of breath work, no amount of anything made it go away. And I cried every day for a year. And I allowed that ceremony to catalyze me into something new. And like you said, right, like we can either have our heart broken open or we can like lock it down and clamp it shut.
Right.
And I chose to let it split me open, you know, and increase my capacity to love and allow the ceremony of grief because like you said, right, like breath work is not a tool to numb myself from the human experience. For many of us, it is a beautiful tool to help me access the emotions of the human experience.
Yes.
The rawness, the richness, the beauty, but also the torment and the grief and the struggle and the shame and all that, and allow myself to become more fluent and more resilient in holding these things versus, no, I'm supposed to be on a cloud and fucking meditating with sun bursting out of my asshole. And so I breathe like this so that I don't have to feel anything. And it's like,
that's Instagram, baby. You know, that's what you see. I am doing this breath work and look, no cares in the world. I have perfect health. I'll live forever. I will, you know, I have never had a bad day. Right. And then, you know, what do you expect? What do you expect people to think about their own lives whenever that's the message that they're getting? It's like, I have bad days, you know, you know, all these things. And so for me, you know, and this is because I've been working with clients now for almost 10 years. And I've worked with so many different people from all over the world. What happens often is because we do have the conscious capacity to suppress our emotions, right? And this is a good thing, right? There are times whenever you should suppress your emotions, you know, and this is something maybe the dads will maybe relate to, you know. There's a time when I have to suppress my emotions. My son will do something, I want to smack him in the head, right? but I'm not a terrible person, right? So you suppress, right? Or, you know, you suppress yourself at the funeral. For some reason, you know, you feel like laughing, you can suppress that, right? So you can suppress certain emotions. But the issue is we get into this thing where we just we've learned to suppress our emotions. And so often what it comes down to is when I work with clients, we're learning how to feel okay to feel and not to feel guilty about feeling or to feel bad because we feel bad, you know. I think the breathwork space is amazing. I'm so happy that it's blown up. I'm so happy that it's grown. Sadly, you know, much of like the thing that brought us together, Wim Hof, right? So, you know, if you practice this, you'll never get sick, kind of type of thing. Like there were a lot of things that were sort of baked in, you know, you always be happy, healthy, and strong. And, you know, what is happiness? It's brain chemistry and all this other stuff. And, you know, it sounds good at first, but then you're like, you know, the human experience is far deeper than that. And what I'm interested in is something that can help a person have more flexibility in their emotions, more awareness. And then when an emotion comes up, we can say, that's an emotion. Just be able to identify it, first of all. Say, I'm aware that I'm having an emotional response right now. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm not going to suppress it. Maybe I'll suppress it a little bit right, in the moment. But I'm not going to forget about this. I'm going to allow myself to be in the presence of myself, because that's who's sending me this emotion. It's not from the boogeyman, right? It's me. I'm going to allow myself to be in the presence of myself long enough for me to say, okay, I understand. I can work my way through this. I think one of the biggest tragedies is that we don't learn this early on, right? That you and I had to grow up at 35, I had to be 40 before I was like, I guess I can feel my feelings. If we knew this earlier, at least the hope is that maybe I could have made better decisions throughout the way. But when it comes down to it, it's a matter of working with this thing that will always be. There's always going to be this conscious and unconscious part of me. I'm always going to think about the future. I'm always going to think about the past. I might have regrets. I might have hopes or worries. But that's not something to be ashamed of. And that's not something that, I need to do this much breath work or yoga or whatever, and so that I'll never have that. That's a pipe dream. And I don't even know if I'd want that. Just to be kind of a emotionless robot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is a really interesting thing to witness the breathwork space get so big, because I think we probably both found it around the same time, 2015-ish area.
Yeah.
And then to see 10 years later, like, oh, this is a whole industry now. And how much of it is on this idea of a panacea that we won't feel, and that is
or that like you just do this technique or this session and then you don't have the trauma anymore.
Right.
Or like it's this thing where it's like, okay, I'll see these, there's a lot of different variations, right? There's the kind where it's just like, let's throw the whole sink, like the kitchen sink out. Let's like add as many things to the session as possible. Or there's the ones
sounds.
Let's do binaural beats. Let's do subliminal messages. Let's do all the different things. Let's flash lights and stuff like that. Because it's like we don't know what we're doing. We're just gonna throw it all at and then there's the ones that is that strip it all down. And I guess maybe I'm closer to that, but I like, my personal thing is just saying, really the breath, and this is part of the philosophy of the language of breath, is that really the breathing is secondary to the feeling. Interoceptive awareness, right? So just your awareness, inner awareness, if you can tolerate, right? If you can hang long enough to feel everything you're feeling and to be okay with feeling those things, you're doing something right. And you're going to be able to make better decisions. You're going to be able to live with those decisions better. You're going to be able to hopefully make fewer bad decisions that you regret. Just, if nothing else, just because you're able to, it's almost like exposure therapy. It's like, here are your emotions. Here are the things. And when we say emotions, so oftentimes I think people think like crying and that's part of it, right? But it's all of it, right? It's lust, it's jealousy, it's gratitude, it's it's relief, it's scared, it's all of those things, and they're always splattered, kind of mixed together. You don't just feel an emotion on an intellectual level. You have anger, but that's because you have this value that was violated. And that makes you feel differently as a man. And then there's all these, what could I have done? Or it's far more complex than what oftentimes we let it, we talk about it to be. So why would it be? And I always say, if breathwork fixed all that, you're right, we should have no more suffering on the whole planet right now. I mean, and so I don't ever claim that breathwork makes you not be able to, it prevents you from suffering. It's just, it is part of the human experience that can really be the difference between suffering and persevering, right? But there's going to be some suffering that comes. I mean, but to be able to get through that, right? And to learn from it, and to not, like you said, you can have your heart broken open or broken closed. That's the difference.
No, I love what you say. What you were saying there about the feeling and the emotion, and it reminded me of a distinction of feelings are based in the body. They belong to the sentient part of us that has, this feeling is constriction. This feeling is tightness. This feeling is fuzzy or whatever. And then there's emotion, which is based in time, right? And so the difference between, I feel tightness in my chest is a feeling versus I feel angry. A lot of times those are emotions that are stuck in a past version of us that are still projecting our future reality based upon our past experience. And really what I heard you were saying in there is that breathwork is an opportunity to separate the feeling from the emotion and say, when I breathe this way, I feel a type of excitement inside of me versus, the narrative is attached to a story that is around anxiety, that is something based in the future. And, the quote is like, we don't need to get feeling better. We need to get better at feeling. And breathwork is one example of that. And then you mentioned a word that I kind of want to dive into because it's another area that you've done a lot of work in, which is exposure, exposure therapy, and in this case, cold exposure.
Right.
And just how have you found cold exposure to be a tool in the tool belt for, helping us live a richer experience?
That's a great question. And this is one of those things where my first foray into writing was writing about cold exposure. I had a YouTube channel and I still have it. It's been like 3 months since I put a video out. So I've been working on some other things, but I was like, hey guys, I see all these people going out and like having all these terrible reactions. People, my first ice bath, I'm going to be in there for 10 minutes or, all these things. And I saw these people and I was like, guys, okay, exactly. Like there was all these stories of people trying to climb barefoot up the mountains. I'm like, no. And so I wrote I call it a practical guide to cold exposure. And that was my first thing. It was just an ebook and it's gone through multiple versions. I eventually published it finally in paperback and, all the different like audiobook and all that stuff. Whenever I decide this will be my final version of it. Because an ebook you can kind of mess with and every year I could kind of touch it up. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a final version of it. And I was like, I want to make sure that what I put in here is legit because there's so much about cold exposure that is like really iffy and like, it's like we're really building off of sort of shaky research. And some of the people that I was really into early on, I'm like, then I took a look, maybe a little closer look at the research. I'm like, maybe that wasn't the best research. And so I looked through all the research and I finally published this book. And I did find out why we catch colds more when it's cold outside. And it's not vitamin D and it's not that we're all indoors and stuff like that. Because we're all indoors anyway. We were low on vitamin D anyway, even in the summertime, right? It literally is because viruses, they're more durable in the cold. And so, they get in your nose and they cause all those things. I was like, well, that's really kind of interesting, and I learned all these things. And yes, cold exposure can boost there's some research that shows it can boost your immune system. There's some research that it shows, yes, it does activate your brown fat. It's not as big of a deal as a lot of times we make it out to be. It is incredible for inflammation. So like the best thing, like it's amazing for inflammation. But out of all those things, after all these years, and I've done all these different programs I created this program called Breathwork Tactics. It's for first responders. And I got it into a major police academy. So it's in the Indianapolis Police Academy. And I put cold exposure training in their programming, not because of any of those benefits, right? Not because of the inflammation, I put it there because I said, okay, I'm going to teach you how to work with your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system using your breathing. And then I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to put you into a stressful situation and we're going to work with it in real time. Mm-hmm. I have never found anything better than ice bathing. Mm-hmm. Never. And so I honestly believe, yes, there are some real health benefits to it, right? So dopamine increase, yes. I think we're swimming in dopamine anyway, but for people who are maybe a little bit low in dopamine, yeah, great, that's great. Norepinephrine, the anti-inflammatory benefits are off the charts. So I'm 100%. If you're having a lot of inflammation, if you want to reduce inflammation, cold training is the best. But if you think about all these benefits, right? So improved circulation, better, some people might say it's good for your cardiovascular system, immune system, all these things. If you just go to the gym 30 minutes a day, you're going to get better benefits than ice bathing. However, I can't put you into the gym. I can't put you into any situation where your whole being is like, we're about to die, right? That is the number one benefit of ice bathing, in my opinion. It's the best when it comes to exposure therapy. You are in a stressful situation. We're going to reset even the threshold of stress changes after you continue to do cold training. And it doesn't even have to be ice bathing. It can just be, you can go in the cold shower and do that every day. That's what I did my first year. It was just cold showers. And they get colder. I'm here in Chicago. These cold showers are not that cold right now because it's summertime, but it's about to get cold, right? You got to just walk outside in Chicago. But when it comes down to it, I think the best benefit of cold training is our ability to work with our nervous system and to stay cool, pun intended, under pressure. When it comes to the physiological benefits, I really like sauna the best. I never thought I'd be like that because I was always a cold training guy. But I started getting into sauna, a few years, I think like 3 years ago, 3 or 4, maybe 3, I don't know. Yeah, 3 years ago, I got into sauna. I got invited to speak at a thing called Sauna Days in Minnesota. Minnesota, way up there, where they got the good beers and the saunas and all the great fishing for walleye. And I was hooked. I got into these saunas. I'm like, this is amazing. And then, of course, the science of sauna is just incredible for all the benefits. And then you can do back and forth. You can go cold, hot, all you want. So you feel like a jellyfish when you're done. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, the physiological benefits of doing 30 minutes of cardio every day are still probably going to be better than doing all that, right? But what I always come back to is I'm going to do the cardio anyway, and there's this amazing camaraderie that comes with sauna. You kind of sitting around, you're drinking, but you're not drinking alcohol, right? You're drinking water. It's this social, it's like going to the bar, but it's healthy for you, right? So there's so much to that. And one of the things that I think we're missing in the modern world, and I'm putting together lectures for my certification, for the language of breath certification. I'm putting those together. And I just gave the lecture about the vagus nerve. And of course, the vagus nerve is this, it's intimately connected to our parasympathetic nervous system. And greater vagal tone is basically, it means that you have more flexibility in your autonomic nervous system. It means you feel more safe and more confident, generally, even under stress. And what's one of the best ways to stimulate the vagus nerve? Talking. Just literally what we're doing right now. It's connected to our larynx and our voice box here. So almost all of our vocal cords, like I think there's just one that's not connected to it. Just simply speaking, like we talk about singing, humming, and things like that, but just talking, right? We're stimulating our vagus nerve. Me and you hanging out right now, we're stimulating our vagus nerve, right? But if you're in the sauna, it's this cool event. After that, I bought tent saunas. I go around and do workshops with tent saunas and ice baths and breath work. Chef's kiss. I don't know. I mean, it's always perfect weather in Hawaii, right? So it's like 70s.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could do, in the summertime here in Chicago, I mean, we got like 90 degrees and it kind of sucks to do sauna, tent, and that. But the season is coming. The fall is near. So the season is coming for sauna tent. And you just walk outside, you can get cold exposure.
Yeah. No, and I love that aspect of, cold exposure. You said something in there. It's like, what I hear is there's no safer way to deal with the I'm going to die voice.
Yes.
In a way that you can consciously, all right, there's a part of us that's like, all right, I'm going to do this on purpose. Mm-hmm. That I know I'm going to feel like I'm going to die, but I can just get out. Whereas because when you were saying that, there's no better way to deal with the dying thing. And I'm like, well, the Navy SEALs put you in a barrel that make you think you're going to drown. It's probably better, but you might drown, Maybe
I should say no safer way.
That's what I hear in that. It's the safest, most controlled way to invite the roommate in of panic and allow that part of us to build trust and rapport with us of hey, I'm going to take care of you. And that's what I tell people is you can get in the ice bath, and the good news is you can get out whenever you're ready.
Anytime you want. And I've done it with the police academy so many times. Occasionally we will have a cadet who will have a panic attack. I mean, it is a primal fear. You're getting into something. It's like I had this one kid just like, I'm from Austin, Texas. Like he kept on repeating that, like as he was, it's like, that's why I'm not going to get into the ice bath. But it was one of those things where, and the danger of working and doing it with the police academy is those are a lot of type A people who want to kind of white knuckle it too.
Right.
And as you know, this is one of those activities where the whole point is to learn how to relax in the face of this overwhelming stressor, right? Because you can white knuckle it through and you're like, and then you get out and you didn't get any real benefit from it. Maybe, I mean, you got those physiological benefits.
Got the photo for the gram.
I mean, you got the exactly. You got all the bragging rights. Maybe you can say I have no problems. I always, a joke I like to make is that in the health and wellness world, one of the things I get so sick of is having to be so healthy and well. It's like you can never. And that was, I think, something that was a sort of something I got from the Wim Hof world is that you were never supposed to admit that you caught a cold. During COVID, there was this email that went out. It was like, basically saying, I'm sure you can take care of it if you have it, as if, this practice, and this is not just Wim Hof. This is also all the, a lot of the other ones. Like I did the Sudarshan Kriya training, and there's a lot of different ones out there, but it's this is the panacea, right? This is the cure to the thing that ails you. And if you get sick, it probably was your fault, right? It's kind of like, it's like you weren't praying hard enough or something like that. It was just like, but were you really doing the technique the way it was supposed to be doing? Right. Yeah, exactly. And so like, that was sort of, I don't know, it was sort of a traumatizing thing for me. And I was right into it for a long time. It was anytime I got sick, I was mad at myself. And I was like, what could I have done to have prevented this? And in the meantime, here I am having a perfectly functional immune system, right? There was an intruder. There was something that wasn't supposed to be inside of me. And my immune system is doing what it's supposed to do, right?
Very well.
And here I was hating it. I was like, I can't believe this. And it was, what is, damn you, functional immune system, keeping me alive, right?
Right.
So sometimes in this health and wellness world, we can really put it on its ear and act like up is down and down is up. And, yes, I don't want to catch colds. And I remember my whole life, I was like, man, if I could do anything I just hate catching colds. Well, no one likes it. But it is your immune system doing what your immune system is supposed to be doing. It sucks, right? I mean, the secondary immune system comes online and it's like symptoms like crazy, right? Let's just flood everything with snot and inflammation. But it's, that's the alternative is that you die from the common cold, right? That it just takes over and perpetuates, and then And so as we go forward, hopefully, my goal, and I like to look at language of breath as like the third wave of breath work, where the goal is to kind of, I don't want to be a wet blanket. I don't want to like deflate, but I'm just looking at like, it's already awesome the way it is, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that you can influence your autonomic nervous system using just your breathing, it's incredible. Like there's the fact that it actually works, that every breath you take is sending and receiving a message. We have this tether between conscious and unconscious processes that we fully don't understand, but we know what they do. We don't know why. We're just like, okay, so this is what's happening. And you can interface with this, and you don't need a college education. This is just like anybody can do it. And you're doing it already, right? It's just like, once you kind of learn how to do it, you can improve the way you feel, and you can have a say, right? To me, that's magic enough. We don't have to make the promises, of immortality, or you're never going to get sick, or, transcendence, all this stuff. Just what we for sure know is pretty damn awesome. And, I always think about, so before Netflix, there was another company that tried to do the Netflix thing. So you're old enough to remember that Netflix, remember the DVDs in the mail? And so there was a company that did that before. But they made a guarantee you would get your DVD the very next day. And they went out of business because people were like, well, if you mess that up, it's pretty easy to mess that up. So sadly enough, I mean, a lot of people get turned off from breath work. I remember when I caught my first cold, after, Wim Hof, and I was like, it's all a lie. It's all, it's like, yeah. And then my wife was like, but wait a minute, wait a minute, you're living better, you're happier, all these other, I'm like, oh, the promise is gone. And it took a little while, So I think it's so important that reality, what actually is real, is pretty awesome. And it's complex. It's not so simple as we would like it to be, but it's not so hard either. I mean, you can do heart resonance frequency breathing and you're going to see amazing benefits. I mean, just incredible. And it's the most boring thing in the world, right? That's why nobody does it, right? So I remember I started doing it, and whenever I stopped doing superventilation for like a while because I had like a sinus infection, and I'm never going to admit that because I'm in breath work and we never get sick, right? But I had a sinus infection, so I just did heart resonance frequency breathing every day, and then after that sinus infection went away, I did these like the CO2 tolerance test. I did all these like things. My heart rate variability was really high. I was so healthy. Like I felt so good, and I hadn't done superventilation in like a month or so. And so a lot of times it's the bold ones. It's the stuff that's not so flashy that makes the biggest move.
Oh, 100%. 4-7-8 breathing is like gold. And there's
I love
nothing
that.
sexy about it.
Nothing.
It's like literal self-prescribed Ambien, but it's like,
yeah.
I can't even see you doing anything. It's like, okay, is that enough?
I love that. I love that about it too, because it's very fast acting and it really does something. Like, and that's one of those first ones you show a person a lot of times, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to show you, let's just do balanced breathing for 10 minutes, but let's just do 4 repetitions of 4-7-8. And then what you do is you add the language of breath, you sprinkle that on. And so what that is okay, so now I want you to focus while you're holding your breath. I want you to smile, and I want you to focus on your feet and really scrunch up your feet. I had this one police officer I was working with. He had been in several critical incidents, and then the last one, he got a really bad concussion, and he just couldn't sleep at all, right? And he had tried 4-7-8, and it never, I heard about that. So I said, okay, listen, here's what we're going to do. Tonight, I want you to do 4-7-8, but while you're doing, so the whole time, I want you to focus on your butt. Okay, and follow me. You probably know where I'm going with this. During the 7-second breath hold, you're going to clench your butt as hard as you can, and then just the rest of it, you're going to relax it, right? And of course, it really worked, right? And we're using these different mechanisms that make this thing work, right? And so whenever I was teaching the police academy, he was a guest one time. He's like, okay, did you tell him about the butt thing? I was like, I wasn't going to mention that, but
there's no butt stuff here, but yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of this stuff isn't sexy, but it's sustainable and it's integrative. Yeah. And I think that's like like you said, the third wave of this is not this like big flashy marketing campaign. It's like someone who embraces all of life as it is, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And, you were mentioning something before the podcast that I'd love to dive into, because it's part of the human experience and the reality that we all go through in this transient, meat suit that we're renting. Yeah. And, you said you were going through some stuff right now that you don't have answers to, and it's not clear. What has that been like?
Yeah, so this hit me, and hey, this is the first podcast I'm talking about it on, and I knew I was going to. Whenever you reached out, I was like, I can share this with you, and I really appreciate the space you provide here. But yeah, I was at the Language of Breath capstone. So this is our capstone event. This where we have we finish the certification for the Language of Breath, and it was at 10,000 feet. And so I thought, and here's the thing, we've done these at higher elevations than that, but I was like, okay, I guess I got altitude sickness because I felt terrible. My heart rate was really high, blood pressure was high. I felt like I had drank tons of coffee, like the real wired feeling you get, but I had no energy too. couldn't sleep. And then when I got home, I realized I had lost 20 pounds. And I was like, oh my God, something's really wrong here. And so it turns out I have hyperthyroidism. We're not 100% sure why. So we're doing some tests. I should actually hear back today or tomorrow about maybe the underlying cause. But it has been a real lesson, and there will be my life before this and there will be my life after this. It's one of those type of experiences. I've never had a major health issue. I've broken bones. I've had injuries. I've had caught, this or that virus, but I've never actually had anything serious, that would kill a person if not for modern medicine. Right. And so here I am, and I'm asking for a little bit more grace with everyone. I am learning, and I'm not that kind of person. I'm not the kind of person that likes to share my personal struggles either. Right. And so even with my friends, I shared it with my friends, and I was like, I'm sorry for dumping that on you, man. And my friends are like, what are you talking? They're just, they're kind of upset with me that I would even, it's one of those things where it's like, they're real good friends. But yeah, it's one of those things where there are times, and it comes back to the health and wellness industry. One thing I love about the health and wellness world is that we take responsibility for our health. Because we say, okay, so the way you feel is a direct result of how you've treated yourself. This hit me out of nowhere, and there's no reason, right? I didn't do anything to deserve it, right? It's not my fault. It's not a flaw of character, or, I wasn't, shooting heroin or something, and like, well, okay, yeah, of course you OD'd and died. No, I was teaching a health and I don't know if it had anything to do with it being at elevation, but it hit me about that time. And, and so, and it's not over. This whole, let's see, it's been since the end of July. So here's the 1st of September as of this recording. So it's been over a month where it's just like, okay, we kind of figured out that it's your thyroid. We don't know why it's happening. It could be an autoimmune disease. There's a couple autoimmune diseases that might be that. It could be that you had some kind of an infection you don't know about. It could be that you have damage of an organ or something like that. But I will say there was a couple weeks where we weren't sure. And, cancer came up, all sorts of heart issues came up. And I started thinking about, I'm going to make some videos for my son, that he can have of me for later on. And I felt so bad. What's really interesting, so it gave me a great insight when people have terrible illnesses, right? Because they don't feel good, but you don't exactly know what that feels like. But now I know. And I remember feeling like, okay, if I die, it's not, I don't mind. I don't mind dying if this feeling stops for me, but I was like, okay, I've got a wife and a son and responsibilities and things like that. I really don't want to die. But if I didn't have those, if it's just a matter of me feeling this way, and just if I have to die, well, I guess I understand, that might happen. But the good news is I'm actually feeling better. What's going to be funny, what's going to be real funny is if I get better before they actually have a diagnosis, which happens, right? I mean, who knows? I'm starting to feel a little bit better. Now, I'm still on medication for this, right? And if not for modern medication, I would be dead, or I would be severely, people did, I guess, survive this before medication, but not many, because it just hits your heart so hard. And so, but what really pisses me off is I lost all my muscle. Like I don't know how much I weighed when I saw you last, but I was, let's see, I was around 220 pounds, a lot of muscle, and I lost, oh my gosh, I lost a bunch of muscle. So, and you work hard for it and you want to keep it. So, but it could be much worse. Yeah. I think the big thing is if you're going through something like this, just to know that you're not alone, and to have the support of loved ones and friends is just so helpful. And something I would say, if you're a person like me and you don't like sharing this sort of thing, you're not bothering your loved ones, right? Reach out to them, say, hey, I'm feeling this way. And, you don't have to talk about it all the time, but you just let them know what's going on. Because the people that care about you, they do care about you. And it's so nice when I have friends that now they're reaching in, they're saying, hey, how's the test? Such a gift is friendship and family. And so, there is a time to share. So, yeah. So thank you for letting me share with you. I will let you know whatever happens.
Please. And I really acknowledge you, Jesse, for the willingness to be vulnerable. It speaks a lot to you, not only your character, but your desire to contribute and to help other people on these paths find some level of courage so that they can be seen and witnessed. And it reminded me a lot, you were talking about losing this muscle mass and all that the narrative that entails, and reminded me of this quote that I have that's, your strength is not defined by how much you can carry, but rather how much you're willing to set down.
You've got a lot of amazing quotes, Scott.
Thank you.
That's a really good one. I will say it did inform me as to some of my identity, and it made me, going to the gym, because I am trying to keep it as much as I can. On the one hand, I will say it's a testament to the value of accumulating as much muscle as you can, because I lost 25 pounds of, well, not all muscle, but at least half of that, a little bit more than half was muscle, and so I would be just like I don't know what I'd be, a twig right now if not. So there's some value there, but also it was a huge eye opener as far as I was in the gym, and I've always gone to these gyms, and you'll see the old guy, and there's a time in our life when we grow, there's a time in our life when we sustain, and then there's a time in our life when we will decline. That is, I would say, one of the things that we should be preparing for, and something to whenever, if your identity is so in your physicality, right, that will eventually fade. And so I went to the gym, and I felt, I look, the amount of weight I'm lifting and I can't do a pull up and all these things. It's just, I am that 95-year-old, guy that I've seen in the gym a million times. And so it has also helped me to say, okay, I have to see more in my identity than just, what I can build in the present. Although I intellectually knew that before, and I intellectually knew all the things I just said, I didn't really know it, until it's like, wow, that was taken from me. And for much of the past month, 1 hour of work would feel like 8 hours of work, right? So it's like I got a sneak preview into the decline that comes with being old. And I'm still working with what I'm learning. I'm still learning, right? I'm still going through it. I'm not through it yet. I don't know how far. From what I've been told, I may have a year to 18 months of ups and downs, to look forward to in this. So, but then again, we have our entire lives to have ups and downs. So it's a learning experience going through. I guess I'm very fortunate that this doesn't look like it's going to kill me, right? It's right. For a minute I thought, okay, this might be it, but unless something terrible comes up, it looks like I will live through this, right. And maybe even be normal, after this. So a lot of lessons.
100%. And it reminds me of two things. Like, one is, this is your ice bath now. Can you hold yourself gently through this and calmly, and it might be longer and more sustained than the actual ice. It surely is, in a way of just like, okay, hey buddy, like, you're getting dysregulated right now. Like, I hear you. It's okay. Yeah. We're going to take a breath. We're going to slow down, and we're going to calm down, and maybe we're not going to do anything today. I mean,
that's so hard. It's so hard. I'm such a doer guy, and it's been so hard to just say, okay, I am going to do one thing today, right? Myopathy is another thing that comes with this. So all of your muscles ache, and it's as if I got a great workout, right? I'm just really sore all over the place. It's just one of those things where I wouldn't wish it on somebody, but sure. I'm seeing the value of it.
Yeah.
Now I am. I mean, at first I was like, but I'm starting to see the value of it, especially as I'm coming through it. For anybody that's going through anything like that, I'm cheering you on, because it's difficult to describe how we feel on the inside, and it can be scary. So I'm cheering you on, anybody that's going through something like this.
It reminded me of something as you were speaking of. So in yoga, they say there are 4 stages of life. And the first stage is to understand your dharma. And the second is to accrue the means necessary to fulfill upon it. The fourth one, we'll get back to the third. The fourth one is to prepare to die.
Yeah.
And the third one is to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And one of the things that I've been going through lately, and it's a really interesting and very perplexing, and I haven't really talked much about it publicly. I've just kind of hidden away and disappeared in a way, is like I haven't wanted to do anything. I spend some days literally just like, and a lot of really deep-seated trauma has come up through the therapy and through some of the different explorations to allow me to like, hey, we're going to reconcile and integrate this, because where I'm headed, I really truly believe is to a level of greatness that I could only dream of.
Yeah.
And wealth and abundance and contribution and service. And so it's like, hey, before the money and abundance and the opportunity to distract myself from this pain comes, we're going to heal and help and hold these parts. And so the past couple of months, I haven't wanted to do anything. Some days I will lay in my bed or on my floor for hours, like 6 hours. I'll just lay in my bed and do nothing. And I'll just sit there. I won't even read. I won't listen to a podcast, maybe scroll my phone a bit, but I will allow myself to feel completely worthless in it, to feel awful, to feel bad, to feel unproductive and lazy, and these really gross feelings that I've never wanted to feel, and to form and forge a level of compassion for myself of like, yeah, I don't want to be doing this, but this is my experience right now. And so allowing myself to be human and just being like, I don't know what the reason is, and I don't know what the solution is. And in this moment, I'm just going to hold myself to the best of my abilities and not layer more judgment, shame, and guilt on top of it. And just be like, yeah, dude, I don't know. Like, I'll sit here with you in that. And so in my own way, I get it, you know, and it's tough.
I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre who said that freedom is what we do with what was done to us. And he's not just talking about, you know, a person doing something to you, right? It's life, right? So life happens, and one person, you know, we're both walking side by side, and one person, you know, gets hit by a truck, and the other person wins the lottery, and you know, it's there's a certain randomness to it, and it's one of those things where giving ourselves grace is so important. Mm-hmm. And I love what you were talking about, just allowing yourself not to feel guilty about it. A person shouldn't feel bad about feeling bad, right? I mean, you're just piling it on. But yeah, I would say this experience, though, one thing it has done for me, and I've heard about people having this where great pain is very focusing. It, you know, it's during that great pain that you start to see some clarity as far as what you want to do. And there's things that I had sort of put down that I'll get back to that. Then I'm like, no, I must do this now. I can't believe I haven't, you know, I can't believe I haven't done this. You know, it really has refocused me. And even though I don't have the energy as much as I used to, you know, as I'm like, okay, I'm making a plan. I'm getting this stuff. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to get this stuff done. And there's a lot of, well, I guess I got to go lay down now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm with you, brother. Like there's like, if, okay, got to go lay down now. You know, it's like,
right.
And I would never have let myself do that before this.
Right.
I was not that kind of person. And I don't think it's one of those things where I'm not saying I was bad for not letting myself do that, but I will from now on. I'm never going to go back to must be productive all the time. I now see the great value in not being productive all the time. Yes. You know, yes. So sometimes you just have to just let yourself be.
100%. I mean, there's been a really subtle distinction that took me going through this period of the difference between resting and relaxing. I'm good at pausing. Like, I know how to stop for a little while. That's a completely different experience, especially internally, viscerally, than relaxing.
Yep.
To release the pressure and the tension in my body of like, oh, I'm actually allowed to like enjoy this. Because for most of my life, I didn't enjoy it. I was too busy trying to validate myself based upon my output and the, you know, the external validation of like, look how hard he works and look how much he's
Yeah.
creating and look how much he's giving back. But internally, I was a fucking shit show.
Right.
And so now to like, without someone, I mean, yes, I live in the most beautiful place in the world probably. And I was telling my friend yesterday, I was like, I don't really go out. Like I sit in my place a lot, or like I'll maybe go lay on the lawn. I live on 4
Right.
acres with my dog. And so like, I can literally just go lay in the yard and like, I don't even go to the beach. Because
Yeah.
the beach is sometimes stressful because then I'm like judging myself versus everybody else's body, or my dog's going crazy, or like I'm like, I just want to lay here and listen to the wind blow, you know? And
Yeah.
it's a practice for me. It's actually very challenging to allow myself to calm down and to like stop living in such a vigilant state.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think most of the people, I know myself, for a long time, I really struggled to enjoy a vacation. You know, you go on a vacation, and then by the time you actually start to relax, it's time to go home.
Right.
You know, and it's like, son of a bitch, why?
Right.
I was trying to do this thing
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say another nice thing about becoming violently ill is that you don't have a choice. You're like, you know what? There's no way that I can do anything. The only thing that would possibly be beneficial to me is to relax. And I hate it that you have to have these, you know, right? It's like, why couldn't I have come up with this when I felt fine, right? No, no, got to be educated. You know, it's these rocks that are in the road, you know, you stumble over them. You're like, well, that was a lesson.
And I truly believe, my partner says this often, and it's also a tenet in internal family systems, that the body is always in our benefit. And so if this is the way that your body has found to actually slow you down to relax, like, wow, how loving a thing that it would do. And it doesn't feel that way to the psyche and the ego, but like,
Right.
if this is the way that Jesse gets to learn relaxation and letting go, like, wow, look at that.
It's funny, Scott, because I do feel like this is about to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's and I'm not just saying that. And the only reason I'm able to say it is because I've gone through the hardest part. Like right now, like I would have called this off. I would have called this off last month, right? I would have said, no, I just can't do it. But I'm starting to be, at least I feel like I'm feeling better, you know. Maybe I've just gotten used to feeling terrible, and I don't know, but I'm on, at least I'm in a better place now where I can talk about it. I mean, you asked me last month, I'd be like, well, this might be what kills me and everything sucks and stuff like that. I think it's, and again, going back to allowing yourself to listen to yourself and be okay with, you know, what's coming up, and, you know, not always trusting that the way you feel is an objective measure of reality, and saying, okay, well, what's so funny, Scott, is that I allowed myself to eat ice cream because I lost so much weight, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling like I'm dying. The only way I can possibly get any kind of pleasure now is just mouth pleasure for that 5 seconds or whatever. So I'm going to do it. So what's crazy is you're not supposed to have ice cream because it has iodine in it, and it makes me feel worse. I was like, son of a bitch. I ate a whole bunch of ice cream before I realized this. And but hey, they make cashew ice cream. I have found cashew ice cream. It's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So. But yeah, I think when it comes down to it, life is full of these things, right?
Yes.
You know, my son, he'll complain about like something that I feel like is a very minor injury. You know, I've got it like a tiny splinter in my finger, and I say, okay, you're going to have a lot of pain in life, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend and make it seem like you're not. It's gonna, you know, paper cuts and stuff like that. You're gonna have those. You're gonna break your arm or something like that. You're gonna have a lot of pain in life. It doesn't mean that, you know, they don't have to break you, right? It's something that it's these amazing possible opportunities for growth, and yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get out of this. And I think I'm not gonna lie. I went through a lot of suffering and feeling bad. but I really do feel like I'm getting good things out of it.
No, I really appreciate that allegory to the splinter, because it gave me this mental image of like, like a pebble might not be the worst thing in your world, but if you're running a marathon and you get a pebble in your shoe, it's going to hurt really bad. And kudos to you for taking the time to slow down, untie your shoes, sit down, take your shoe off, pull the pebble out, put your shoe back on, and start running again. And what a beautiful lesson to teach to your son of like, hey, these things won't break you, and you have to address them. If you don't take a splinter out, it will hurt. It will be very annoying.
Get infected and all those things.
Right.
Yeah. But it's not, it can't be the thing. It's like, okay, yes, we can, it does hurt. We acknowledge it hurts. It's not the only thing that's going to happen. There's going to be other things that are going to happen too. And we got to roll with it.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Jesse. It's been a wonderful conversation. Yeah.
It's been great to connect with you again, Scott. I've loved everything. I'm seeing these clips from now. Sadly, I'm not in Hawaii, so I can't be on such an awesome clip as
part two coming.
Part two in Hawaii, but I really love everything you've been doing, and I always loved your energy and your message. So thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been a great time, and it's great to see you. And I wish you all the health and the rest, and let me know if you need any support of any sort, whether it's an ear or otherwise.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. Where can the listeners find more of what you're up to, your books, all that type of stuff? We didn't even get to the children's book.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Yeah. So, hey, children's book is the most recent publication. It's a book that I wrote with my family. And so quite literally, we have this little tradition where we like to eat breakfasts outside, or try to have some kind of outside like picnic breakfast on Saturday mornings. And so we came up with this fun story, and it's called Moo, A Cow's Practical Guide to Chilling Out. And you might think that cows are like really relaxed animals, but you don't realize they used to be a mess. They were a mess. and this is the story about how they figured out how to get everything under control, and that's how they learned how to moo. And so that is the story. When you buy the book, there's a link in the back, and it takes you to our very own. It's like an audio book with the video. So my son and I and my wife voiced the characters. It was, you can just enjoy the sheer ridiculousness of it. But that is available on my website. It's jessecoomer.com. It's JESSECOOMER.com. And you can go there to find all my books. And you can also go there to learn more about the language of breath certification. We are just getting ready to start the certification in 2026. Our capstone will be the end of April, and it's out in Utah. Not as high of elevation this time. I don't know if it had anything to do with my thyroid or not, but we're not taking any chances. And so that's coming up. You can also go to languageofbreathcollective.com and learn all about the language of breath. You can meet all of our certified language of breath breathworkers all over the world. We're talking, I don't know how many continents we've got now, but quite a few, and multiple different languages, people from all over the world. And you can learn more about the Language of Breath book, and the Language of Breath online course is there as well. You can also find me on Instagram, Jesse Coomer Breath. And there's dad jokes, and there's some science too. I talk about breathwork a lot. So those are places you can find me. So reach out and say hi.
Amazing. Okay, real quick, couple final questions. What's your message to the world?
Oh my gosh. My message to the world is that you are worth the work.
That's great. Second, what's your favorite dad joke?
Where does the boat go when he gets sick? To the dock.
I love it.
All right.
I love it. That's what my favorite is. What is a pirate's favorite letter?
Ooh, is it R?
No, it'd be the C.
I like how it draws me in. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I know that one. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. And last of all, what does it mean to be human?
Well, I will say this is the subject of every play, of every piece of art, of every song, of every poem that you've ever heard of. To be human is to share in a wide range of desires and hopes and dreams in a finite amount of time alongside of other people who are doing the same thing.
I love that answer. Jesse, thank you again.
Scott, it has been truly a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. And to the audience, thank you for your time and attention and presence here today. And until the next one, aloha.